The chamber stretched out like a cathedral of glass and steel, its curved walls displaying the stars themselves, as if the universe watched these proceedings with patient eyes. Ambassador Chun sat at the human delegation table, her fingers drumming against the smooth surface, while 7 alien species debated the future of galactic military policy. The Krull representative stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scaled body gleaming under the artificial light. His voice rumbled through the translation devices embedded in every seat. The humans claim they seek peace, yet they refuse to submit their fleet manifests for council inspection, War Master Throck said. His 4 eyes fixed on Chun with undisguised contempt. Chun took a slow breath, reminding herself that this was only humanity's 6th month among the stars. 6 months since the first contact ships had arrived in Earth orbit. 6 months since humanity learned they were children in a galaxy full of ancient powers, War Master Throck. We have submitted our active fleet numbers as requested, Chun replied, keeping her voice level and diplomatic. All ships currently in service are accounted for in the documents provided last week. Active fleet, Throck repeated, his mandibles clicking in. What the humans had learned was derision, a curious distinction. Ambassador, the Valorian delegate, a being of crystalline structure that refracted light into rainbow patterns, chimed in with a sound like wind through metal tubes. The Krull raised a valid concern. The translation rendered, most species do not distinguish between active and inactive military assets. Chun felt the trap closing but saw no way around. The other delegates leaned forward in their seats. The chamber grew quiet, except for the soft hum of environmental systems. Earth maintains certain vessels and weapon systems in what we call Protocol Sanctuary, Chun said carefully. These assets are not active and are not intended for deployment under normal circumstances. Protocol Sanctuary? Throke's laugh was like grinding stone. You keep weapons you claim you will not use? This makes no tactical sense. It makes perfect sense to us, Chun said, and she could hear the edge creeping into her voice. After World War III, after we nearly destroyed ourselves, humanity agreed that certain weapons and tactics were too dangerous to ever use again. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. The delegates spoke over each other in a dozen languages, while the translation system struggled to keep up. The Myran ambassador, whose species prided themselves on logic and reason, raised a tentacle for silence. Ambassador Chun, please clarify, the Myran said. You possess military capabilities that you choose not to deploy. You deliberately restrict your own strength? Chun realized her mistake too late. The words hung in the air like a confession. We hold back because we must, she said quietly, because we know what we're capable of when we don't. Throke's eyes widened, all 4 of them gleaming with something Chun recognized from Earth's own history. The look a predator gets when it smells weakness. Remarkable, Throck said softly. The humans have been negotiating from a position of false strength. They pretend to military capability they are too afraid to use. That's not what I said. It is precisely what you said. Ambassador, Throck interrupted. You admitted that humanity deliberately weakens itself, that you maintain weapons you lack the courage to deploy. Chun stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Courage has nothing to do with it, she said, her voice harder now. We hold back because we remember, because we looked into the abyss once and barely pulled ourselves back. How poetic. Throck said, the Krell Empire has no such weakness. We use every tool at our disposal to maintain order and strength. The session ended badly. Chun returned to her quarters in the human diplomatic station, her hands shaking as she poured herself water. The communication request came through within the hour. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo's face appeared on the screen, her dark eyes sharp with concern. I watched the session, Okonkwo said without preamble. How bad is it? Bad, Chun admitted. Throck knows we've been holding back. The whole council knows now. We always knew this might happen. Okonkwo said, Protocol Sanctuary was never meant to be secret forever. It was meant to keep us from becoming monsters again. The Krell don't see it that way. Chun said, they see weakness. They see an opportunity. Okonkwo was silent for a long moment in the background. Chun could see the command center of Earth's primary defense station, officers moving between consoles. The organized chaos of military readiness. I'm putting the fleet on alert. Okonkwo said finally, quietly, no public announcements, but if Throck decides to test whether we're really as restrained as you suggested, he will. Chun interrupted. I saw it in his eyes, he's going to push. Then we'll be ready, Okonkwo said. But Chun, you need to understand something. If this goes wrong, if the Krell actually attack, the pressure to suspend Protocol Sanctuary is going to be enormous. We can't, Chun said immediately. We created those protocols for a reason. We saw what total war looked like. We counted the bodies. Sarah, I know, Okonkwo said quietly. I was there, I helped write Protocol Sanctuary, but I'm also a military commander. And if I have to choose between following protocols and protecting human lives. Don't finish that sentence, Chun said. Please. 3 days later, the Krell fleet began moving toward the outer human colonies. Long-range sensors picked up the formation. 40 warships. Enough to overwhelm the small defense forces stationed at New Sarajevo. Chun spent 18 hours in emergency diplomatic sessions, trying to get the Galactic Council to intervene. The other species offered sympathy and concern. They offered strongly worded statements and calls for restraint. They offered everything except actual help. The Krell claimed they are conducting military exercises in unclaimed space, the Valorian delegate explained. With obvious discomfort, we cannot condemn exercises. New Sarajevo is 3 light years from their current position, Chun said, her voice raw from exhaustion. Those aren't exercises. That's an invasion force. Perhaps, the Myron ambassador said, but without proof of hostile intent. The Council cannot authorize intervention. We are a body of laws. Ambassador John, not of assumptions. Chun looked around the chamber at the assembled species. At the beings who had built this civilization among the stars, she saw their fear. They were afraid of the Krell. Afraid to stand against a species that had no qualms about using every weapon at their disposal. And they were afraid of humanity too. Now afraid of what the humans might become if Protocol Sanctuary ever failed. You're going to let them attack, Chun said. You're going to let them kill human colonists because you're too frightened to act. No one met her eyes. Chun walked out of the chamber and sent an encrypted message to Admiral Okonkwo. The reply came back in seconds. Fleet moving to intercept. Estimate 72 hours to New Sarajevo. Tell me we're going to make it in time. Chun had no answer. She stood at the viewport in her quarters and looked out at the stars. At the vast darkness between worlds. Somewhere out there. The Krell fleet was moving somewhere out there. Human colonists went about their lives, unaware that their peaceful existence was about to end. And somewhere behind her, locked in classified databases and hardened bunkers, Protocol Sanctuary waited all the weapons humanity had promised never to use again, all the tactics they had sworn to abandon, all the darkness they had fought so hard to leave behind. Chun pressed her hand against the cold glass and wondered how long humanity's restraint would last. She wondered if the galaxy had any idea what it had just provoked. She wondered if they would survive learning the answer. The attack began at dawn on New Sarajevo. Though dawn was an arbitrary human concept on a world that orbited a different sun, Colonel Marcus Webb stood in the command center watching the displays turn red as Krell ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and began their Assault. Shields holding at 70%. His tactical officer reported, her voice professionally calm despite the situation. Enemy fleet composition. 42 warships. Multiple assault carriers. Webb had 8 defense platforms. 12 patrol ships and 30,000 colonists depending. On him the math was brutal and simple. Deploy all fighters. He ordered, activate automated defense. Grids get the civilians to the shelters now, the first Krell. Bombardment lit up the sky like a second sun energy. Beams carved through the atmosphere, striking the northern shield generators with calculated precision. The ground shook beneath Webb's feet as the EA's station absorbed impacts that would have vaporized an unshielded city. Shields at 40%. Tactical called out. Northern generator offline compensating with auxiliary power. Webb watched his patrol ships engage the enemy fleet. They were good pilots, well trained. Following protocol sanctuary engagement rules. Defensive formations, measured responses, minimum necessary force. They died in the first 6 minutes. Sir, we're receiving hails from the Krell flagship. Communications reported. Webb nodded grimly. Put it through. War Master Throk's face filled the main screen, his 4 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Colonel Webb, I offer you terms. Throk said, surrender your defensive systems and prepare for occupation. Your people will be treated according to Galactic Council guidelines for conquered populations. You're attacking a peaceful colony world, Webb said, his hands gripping the edge of his console. The Council will condemn this. The Council will do nothing. Throk replied, they fear strength, they prefer comfortable words to uncomfortable action, but I offer you mercy. Colonel, surrender now and I will allow evacuation ships to depart with your civilians. Webb looked at his remaining forces on the tactical display. 3 defense platforms, no patrol. Ship's shields failing. How long until Admiral Okonkwo's fleet arrives? He asked his navigation officer quietly. 48 hours at best speed. Sir, 48 hours. Webb had maybe 4 hours before the shields collapsed completely. He thought about the protocols, about the rules of engagement that governed human military operations. Protocol Sanctuary specified measured response, proportional force, protection of civilian populations above all else. He thought about requesting override authorization, about asking Earth Command to suspend the protocols. He thought about what humanity could do if they stopped holding back. Then he watched another Krell bombardment strike the southern residential districts. The shields held, but he could see the power readings dropping with each impact. War Master Throk. Webb said carefully, I need time to consider your terms. Give me 2 hours to consult with my command staff. Throk's mandibles clicked in amusement. You have 1 hour? Colonel, then I resume bombardment until your shields fail. The screen went dark. Webb turned to his senior officers, saw the same calculation in their eyes that he felt in his gut. We could request protocol override. His executive officer said quietly, Earth Command might authorize it under these circumstances. And if they don't? Webb asked, if they tell us to follow standard protocols while the Krell slaughter civilians? Then we follow orders, the XO said. But his voice carried no conviction. Webb spent the next 40 minutes evacuating as many civilians as possible. The transport ships launched under covering fire from the remaining defense platforms, their holds packed beyond safe capacity. Women clutching children, old men who had built this colony from nothing, young couples who had come here dreaming of a new world. 15,000 made it off-planet before the Krell resumed their attack. The shields failed. 18 minutes later, Webb stood in the command center as Krell assault troops began landing in the city streets. He could hear small arms fire through the external audio feeds as his ground forces engaged the enemy. They were following protocols, establishing defensive positions, Attempting to minimize collateral damage, the Krell had no such concerns. Webb watched through security cameras as they systematically destroyed anything that moved. Request from Captain Morrison. Sir, communications reported. Ground forces requesting permission to utilize suppressed weapon systems. Webb knew what that meant. Weapons that Protocol Sanctuary had locked away, weapons humanity had promised never to use. Denied. Webb said, the word tasting like ash. Tell them to hold positions. And wait for relief. But relief wasn't coming in time. Webb knew it. His officers knew it. The 15,000 colonists still sheltering in the underground complexes knew it when the Krell breached the command center. Webb was still at his post. He died following Protocol Sanctuary guidelines. His weapon set to minimum necessary force. Trying to protect civilians, he had no hope of saving. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo received the reports in real time. Stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance, humanity's largest warship, and watched New Sarajevo fall, casualty estimates coming in. Admiral, her intelligence officer, reported at least 12,000 confirmed dead and known. Number of wounded or captured. Okonkwo's hands were steady as she input commands to her. Consolidated 29 years of military service had taught her control, but her voice shook when she spoke. Get me Earth Command Priority, Alpha. The connection took seconds. The World Security Council appeared on her screen. 15 faces representing every nation on Earth. Admiral Okonkwo, the Secretary General, began. We've been monitoring the situation. They slaughtered them. Okonkwo interrupted. Colonel Webb followed every protocol. He died following our rules while the Krell ignored theirs. We understand your anger. Do you? Okonkwo demanded. Did you watch them die? Did you hear their last transmissions? The council members exchanged glances. The representative from New Zealand spoke up, a voice careful. Admiral, we need to consider the diplomatic implications if we escalate. Escalate? Okonkwo felt something cold settle in her chest. Madam Representative, they just massacred a civilian population. How exactly do we escalate from genocide? The Galactic Council is calling for restraint, the Secretary General said. They believe this can still be resolved through negotiation. Okonkwo pulled up the casualty reports and transmitted them to the council. Names scrolled across their screens. Thousands of names. Tell me which of these people we negotiate back to life. She said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Finally, the representative from Japan spoke, his voice heavy with old memories. Protocol Sanctuary was created for a reason. Admiral, we remember what total war looks like. We counted those bodies too. And now we're counting new ones. Okonkwo said, because we held back, because we were afraid of what we might become. But the Krell aren't afraid. And our restraint didn't save those colonists. More silence. Okonkwo could see the struggle on their faces. These were good people, trying to make an impossible choice. We need time, the Secretary General said finally. Time to consult with our governments, to consider all options. How much time? Okonkwo asked, how many more colonies do the Krell get to destroy while we consider options? 24 hours, Admiral. Will we convene tomorrow at this time? The connection ended. Okonkwo stood alone on her bridge, surrounded by officers who waited for orders. Navigation, she said quietly. Set course for New Sarajevo, best possible speed. Admiral, we'll arrive too late to... I know, Okonkwo interrupted, but there might be survivors, and I want the Krell to see us coming. The fleet moved forward. 14 warships carrying the hope and rage of humanity behind them. Earth's networks exploded with footage from New Sarajevo, the bodies in the streets, the burning buildings, the final transmissions from Colonel Webb and his command. Staff public outrage grew like a tsunami. People demanded action, demanded justice. demanded that their government do something in the council chambers. Ambassadors watched the growing fury in military academies. Instructors quietly began reviewing suppressed tactical manuals in classified bunkers. Automated systems waited for authorization codes that would unlock Protocol Sanctuary and in the darkness between stars. Admiral Okonkwo's fleet raced toward a dead colony, while behind them, humanity's restraint began to crack. The emergency session of the World Security Council lasted 14 hours. Representatives argued, debated, pleaded, and finally voted Protocol Sanctuary was suspended by unanimous decision. Admiral Okonkwo received the authorization codes while her fleet still raced toward New Sarajevo. She stood alone in her ready room, looking at the data streaming across her personal terminal weapons, systems coming online, tactical doctrines, unlocking strategic assets, activating across human space, things humanity had sworn never to use again. Computer, she said quietly. Display. Protocol Sanctuary Asset Inventory. The list scrolled past kinetic bombardment satellites capable of hitting targets from orbit with the force of nuclear weapons, AI-driven tactical systems that could process battlefield data faster than any living mind, psychological warfare protocols designed to break enemy morale through calculated terror, planet cracker missiles kept as deterrents, never meant to launch cyber warfare packages that could devastate enemy infrastructure, biological agents locked in maximum security facilities, chemical weapons that violated every treaty Earth had ever signed, and more, so much more. Humanity's darkest innovations, created in the fires of World War III and sealed away when the survivors realized what they had become. Fleet-wide announcement. Okonkwo ordered. Her face appeared on every screen in every ship. 14 warships, 20,000 personnel, all watching their admiral. This is Admiral Okonkwo. She began, by order of the World Security Council. Protocol Sanctuary is hereby suspended. All suppressed weapons systems are now authorized for deployment. All restricted tactical doctrines are now in effect. She paused, letting the words sink in. Saw the shock on some faces, the grim satisfaction on others. I know what this means, she continued. I helped write Protocol Sanctuary. I was there when we decided some weapons were too terrible to use, but the Krell have made their choice, and we've made ours. They wanted to see what we're capable of when we stop holding back. Okonkwo's voice hardened. We're going to show them. The fleet arrived at New Sarajevo to find the Krell occupation in full swing. Were master strokes. Ships orbited the colony world while ground forces secured the population centers. Was preparing a victory statement when his sensors detected the human fleet. 42 ships. His tactical officer reported. Wait. Updating count. 14 ships, but massive power signatures. Throck watched the tactical display with growing interest. The humans had arrived too late to save their colony. This would be an opportunity to demonstrate Krell superiority again. Hail them, he ordered. Let us see if they beg for their colonists back. Admiral Okonkwo's face appeared on his screen. War Master Throck, she said. You are ordered to withdraw your forces from New Sarajevo immediately. Or what, Admiral? Throck asked. You will attack? You will violate your precious protocols? Protocol Sanctuary is suspended, Okonkwo said flatly. You have 1 hour to evacuate. Throck laughed, the sound echoing through his command center. You are outnumbered 3-1. Admiral, your restraint was the only advantage you possessed. Without it, you are simply weak. 1 hour. Okonkwo repeated. Then the connection ended. Throck turned to his fleet commander. Prepare to engage. Let us teach the humans the cost of their arrogance. The Battle of New Sarajevo lasted 8 minutes. The human fleet opened fire at extreme range with weapons the Krell had never seen before. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds punched through Krell shields like they weren't there. Tactical systems analyzed enemy formations, and exploited weaknesses faster than Krell captains could react. 3 Krell warships simply vanished in the first salvo, their hulls torn apart by impacts that registered on seismic sensors on the planet below. Return fire. Thrak screamed. All ships, attack pattern Delta 7. His fleet tried to maneuver, tried to respond with their own weapons. The human ships moved, like they could predict every Krell action before it happened, because they could. AI systems had analyzed decades of Krell tactical doctrine in seconds. They knew how Krell captains thought, how they fought, how they died one by one. Throk's ships fell energy beams that should have overwhelmed human shields were dissipated by countermeasures. The Krell didn't know existed missiles that should have crippled human engines were intercepted by point defense systems operating at impossible speeds. Retreat. Thrak ordered all ships, withdraw to rally point. Admiral Okonkwo's voice cut through every Krell communication channel. No retreat, she said. No quarter, no survivors. The human ships pursued, they ran down, fleeing. Krell vessels like predators chasing wounded prey, they fired. On escape pods, they targeted life support systems to ensure slow death instead of quick. They broadcast the destruction on all frequencies so every Krell ship in range would know what was coming. War Master Thrak died when the ES Defiance punched a hole through his flagship's main reactor. His last thought was disbelief that the humans had hidden such capability. His last sight was the human warship moving past his dying vessel toward the next target 8 minutes after it began. The Battle of New Sarajevo was over 42 Krell warships reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Not a single human ship lost, not even seriously damaged. The galaxy watched through long-range sensors and telescope arrays. They watched humanity do something no one had ever done before. Completely annihilate a Krell battle fleet without taking casualties. Galactic Council called emergency sessions. The Valorian delegate spoke with crystalline voice shaking. The humans used weapons that violate the Convention on Space Warfare. They executed surrendering crews. They showed no mercy. Ambassador Chen stood before the council, her face expressionless. You said the Krell were conducting exercises. She reminded them. You said you couldn't intervene without proof of hostile intent. We provided that proof with 12,000 civilian bodies. This is not justice. The Myron ambassador protested. This is slaughter. Yes. Chen agreed. Now you understand what we were trying to avoid. This is what happens when humanity stops holding back. Are you happy with what you've learned? No one answered on New Sarajevo. Human Marines landed and began liberating the survivors. The Krell ground forces fought desperately, but they were facing an enemy that no longer cared about proportional response. The Marines used weapons that the Galactic Council had banned centuries ago. They showed the same mercy the Krell had shown Colonel Webb and his people, which is to say, none at all. The occupation force was eliminated in 6 hours. The few Krell who tried to surrender were given a choice: stand trial for war crimes or face immediate execution. Most chose the trial within 48 hours of protocol sanctuary suspension. Earth's military had revealed capabilities that shocked the galaxy: orbital bombardment, platforms that could sterilize continent, cyber warfare systems that took control of 3 Krell listening posts and broadcast humanity's terms across their entire communication network. Psychological warfare broadcasts that caused panic and desertion in Krell forward positions. Deep strike teams that appeared inside Krell military installations using technology the Council thought impossible, and that was just the beginning. Earth's entire industrial capacity pivoted to war production factories that made consumer goods, retooled to produce weapons. Mining operations shifted to extracting materials for warship construction. Civilian shipyards began assembling military vessels in 3 weeks. Humanity's active fleet doubled in 6 weeks. It tripled. The Krell Empire, sensing weakness for the first time in their history, pulled back their forward positions. They issued statements calling for negotiation. They appealed to the Galactic Council for mediation. Admiral Okonko's response was broadcast across every major communication network in known space. The Krell wanted war without mercy, she said. They attacked our civilians, they murdered our people. They wanted to see what we were capable of. She leaned forward, her eyes hard as steel. We're going to show them every world they occupy. We will liberate every ship they field. We will destroy every base they hold. We will reduce to rubble. This ends when the Krell Empire no longer exists as a military power. The council chambers erupted in protests. You cannot wage a war of extermination. The Valorian delegate cried. Why not? Chun asked. You couldn't stop them from attacking us. Why should we believe you can stop us from finishing what they started? In the darkness between stars, human fleets began moving, not to defend, to attack. The Krell had opened a door they could never close. They had asked to see humanity without restraint. And now, as their empire began to burn, they finally understood what Ambassador Chun had tried to tell them. Humanity held back because they remembered what happened when they didn't. They held back because they knew what monsters they could become, but the Krell had wanted monsters, and humanity, unleashed at last, was happy to oblige. The siege of Krell Prime began on a Monday morning. Earth Standard Time. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched humanity's largest fleet assemble around the Krell home system on 143 warships, enough firepower to crack a planet's crust, enough rage to fuel a genocide. Fleet reports ready, Admiral, her tactical officer announced. All ships at battle stations, siege weapons armed and targeted. Okonkwo nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the blue-green world displayed on the main screen. 8 billion Krell lived on that planet. 8 billion. Souls who had nothing to do with War Master Throk's decision to attack New Sarajevo. 8 billion lives that depended on what she chose to do next. Status of the defensive fleet? She asked. Approximately 200 Krell warships in orbital positions. Tactical responded. They're broadcasting surrender terms. Put it through. A Krell admiral appeared on screen, younger than Throk, his scales marked with patterns that indicated high-born status. I am Admiral Kresh of the Krell Defense Fleet, he said. We request immediate ceasefire and formal negotiations. Request denied, Okonkwo said flatly. Evacuate your military installations. You have 72 hours. Kresh's 4 eyes widened in shock. Admiral, there are civilian populations near those installations. We cannot evacuate everyone in that time frame. Then I suggest you start now, Okonkwo said, and closed the channel on Earth. Protests filled the streets. Peace movements demanding an end to the war clashed with those calling for complete Krell surrender. The World Security Council met in emergency session for the 3rd time. That week, Admiral Okonkwo is requesting permission to deploy planet cracker weapons, the Secretary General announced. She believes targeted strikes on military installations will force Krell surrender planet crackers. The representative from India said, his voice shaking. Those weapons were sealed away for a reason. They're genocide tools. The Krell started this. The representative from Brazil countered. They attacked first. They killed our civilians. And we've killed thousands of theirs in response. India shot back. Where does it end? Ambassador Chun watched the debate from the observer's gallery. She had returned to Earth after the Galactic Council suspended her credentials. The other species didn't want to talk to humanity anymore. They were too afraid. How many? She asked when she was finally allowed to speak. How many Krell have we killed? The military liaison checked his data, confirmed casualties. Approximately 40,000. Military personnel estimated civilian casualties from collateral damage. 12 to 15,000. So we've already killed more than they killed at New Sarajevo, Chun said quietly. And now we're preparing to kill millions more. They struck first. The Brazilian representative insisted. They need to understand there are consequences. They understand. Chum said, the entire galaxy understands we've proven. We can win without mercy. The question is whether we want to. The Secretary General leaned forward. Ambassador, what would you recommend? Chum thought about Colonel Webb dying at his post. She thought about the civilians sheltering in New Sarajevo's underground complexes, waiting for rescue that came too late. She thought about Protocol Sanctuary and why humanity had created it in the first place. I recommend we remember who we are. She said, we suspended Protocol Sanctuary to protect our people, not to become what we fought against in World War III. The vote was close 8-7. The Council authorized limited strikes on military targets, only no planet crackers. No genocide. Okonkwo received the orders in silence. She stood in her ready room. Along with her thoughts, a soft chime announced a visitor. Come. She said Colonel Marcus Webb walked in, except it wasn't Webb, because Webb was dead. This was Major James Webb, Marcus's younger brother, transferred to Okonkwo's command staff 2 weeks ago. Admiral, James said quietly, I wanted you to know that I support whatever decision you make. Your brother died following Protocol Sanctuary, Okonkwo said. He followed the rules while the Krell slaughtered civilians. Doesn't that make you angry? Every day, James admitted. But Marcus believed in those protocols. He helped train the officers who wrote them. He died believing that restraint was strength, not weakness. And you? Okonkwo asked, what do you believe? James was quiet for a long moment. I believe my brother would want us to win this war. He said finally, but he wouldn't want us to lose ourselves doing it. After he left, Okonkwo sat down and began reviewing the tactical plan's limited strikes on military installations, precision weapons, minimal collateral damage. It would take longer cost, more human lives, but it would leave her able to look at herself in the mirror. The attack began at dawn. Krell Prime local time, human warships moved into firing positions while Krell defenders scrambled to respond. But then something unexpected happened. The long-range sensors detected a massive energy surge from deep within Krell territory. Admiral, we're picking up a fleet emergence. Tactical reported. Krell reinforcements coming out of FTL. Okonkwo tensed. How many ships? Unknown. Ma'am, the energy signature is wrong. This isn't Krell technology. The new fleet materialized at the edge of the system, 50 massive warships, each one larger than anything the Krell possessed, and they were broadcasting on all frequencies. This is the Krell's second fleet. A voice announced, we are moving to engage human forces. But the voice was wrong. The accent was off, and when the tactical analysis came back, it confirmed Okonkwo's suspicions. Ma'am, those aren't Krell ships, her intelligence officer said. Duh. Energy signatures matched the Valorian consortium. The Galactic Council had intervened not to stop the war, but to stop humanity from winning it. Admiral Kresh is hailing us. Communications reported the Krell Admiral appeared on screen, and Okonkwo could see the shame in his 4 eyes. I did not ask for this, Kresh said quietly. The Council fears what you will do if you win. They have decided to ensure the balance of power remains intact. They are protecting you, Okonkwo said, understanding dawning. They'd rather save the Krell Empire than allow humanity to become too powerful. Before Kresh could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. Krell ground forces launching attack on human positions on New Sarajevo. Tactical shouted. Reports of chemical weapons deployment. The main screen split to show footage from the colony. World human marines in sealed armor fighting Krell troop civilians caught in the crossfire. Their bodies convulsing as nerve agents filled the air. They're targeting the civilian shelters, James Webb said, his voice hollow. The same shelters where the survivors from the first attack are hiding. Okonkwo watched the screens, watched the Galactic Council's peacekeeping fleet positioning to defend the Krell homeworld, watched Krell forces deploy weapons. Humanity had banned centuries ago against defenseless civilians. She thought about restraint, about protocols, about the price of holding back. When the enemy had no such limitations, tactical. She said quietly, "Deploy Planet Cracker Package 7 target. Krell Military Command Bunker, Northern Continent." "Admiral, that bunker is beneath their capital city." Tactical protested. "I'm aware of its location." Okonkwo said, "The Council has chosen their side now, we choose ours." "Man, the collateral damage. Execute the order." The Planet Cracker missile launched from the Defiance was a beautiful weapon in a terrible way. Its warhead capable of punching through planetary crust and triggering seismic events that would devastate continents. The Galactic Council fleet tried to intercept. They failed. The missile struck Krell Prime's northern continent and detonated 3 kilometers beneath the surface. Ground split open, cities collapsed, tectonic plates shifted. The capital city of the Krell Empire slid into a newly formed chasm. 12 million Krell died in the first hour. Admiral Kresh's face appeared on every human ship's screen. He was broadcasting from his flagship. As it burned around him, human cyber warfare packages had infected his fleet's systems. "You've doomed us all," he said, his voice barely audible over alarms and explosions. "The Council will never allow this. They will unite against you. You will face the entire galaxy alone. Then the entire galaxy will learn the same lesson you did." Okonkwo replied, "We held back because we chose to, not because we had to, and we're done choosing restraint over survival." She closed the channel and turned to her fleet. "All ships, engage at will. Target the Council peacekeeping fleet. No survivors." The Battle of Krell Prime became the bloodiest engagement in galactic history. 143 human warships against 50 Council vessels and 200 Krell defenders. It should have been a massacre. It was just not the massacre the Council expected when it ended 6 hours later. The human fleet had lost 18 ships. The Council peacekeeping fleet no longer existed. The Krell home defense fleet was scattered debris orbiting a dying world, and humanity stood alone, victorious and terrible, facing a galaxy that finally understood what they had unleashed. 6 months after the ceasefire, Admiral Sarah Okonkwo walked through the gardens of the United Nations headquarters. The cherry trees were blooming, their pink petals drifting on the spring breeze. She had resigned her commission 3 weeks after Krell Prime. The nightmares had started 2 weeks before that. "Admiral." A voice called Ambassador Chun approached. Wearing civilian clothes now, she had been formally recalled after the Council expelled all human diplomatic staff. "Ambassador," Okonkwo replied, "though I suppose we're both just civilians now." They walked together in silence for a while. Above them, orbital defense platforms tracked every vessel approaching Earth. Humanity had won the war, but victory had come with a price. "Have you seen the latest refugee numbers?" Chun asked. Okonkwo nodded. 40 million Krell displaced from their homeworld. Tectonic damage is still spreading. The Council estimates the planet will be uninhabitable within a decade. "We did that," Chun said quietly. "We cracked their world. They used chemical weapons on civilian shelters." Okonkwo replied, "They allied with the Council to prevent us from defending ourselves, and we responded by killing millions." Chun said, "We became exactly what Protocol Sanctuary was designed to prevent." They stopped at a memorial wall. Names carved in black stone, the casualties from New Sarajevo, from the fleet battles, from the siege of Krell Prime. Human names mixed with Krell victims and perpetrators. Side by side. "The trials start next week," Okonkwo said. "They want me to testify. Will you?" "I ordered the Planet Cracker strike," Okonkwo said. 12 million dead on my command. What else is there to say?" Chun touched the wall, her fingers tracing names. "Colonel Webb is listed here," she said, "and his brother James died at Krell Prime. Didn't he?" "Leading a boarding action against a Krell carrier," Okonkwo confirmed. "He volunteered, said his brother would have wanted the Krell to face justice. Is that what we delivered? Chun asked. Justice? Okonkwo had no answer across the city. In the International Criminal Court, prosecutors prepared cases against military commanders from both sides. Krell, officers who had ordered attacks on civilians, human captains who had fired on escape pods, admirals who had authorized weapons banned. By every civilized species, the trials would last for years. Some would be convicted, some would be acquitted. None of it would bring back the dead on Krell Prime. The remaining population struggled to survive. The planet cracker strike had triggered cascading tectonic failures, earthquakes shook the major continents, daily volcanic eruptions filled the sky with ash. The Krell government, what remained of it, had fractured into 6 competing factions. Human occupation forces tried to maintain order while relief ships brought food and medical supplies. It was a strange kind of peace, built on the ruins of total war at the Galactic Council chambers, now relocated to a neutral station. The remaining species debated humanity's status. The Valorian delegate spoke with crystalline voice, subdued. The humans demonstrated capabilities that threaten every established power in known space. They said, "We must decide how to respond." They destroyed the Krell Empire. The Myron ambassador added, "They defeated a council peacekeeping fleet. They deployed weapons we thought extinct." Ambassador Chun's replacement, a younger diplomat named David Park, stood before them. "Humanity seeks readmission to the Galactic Council," he said. "We acknowledge the laws of war were violated on both sides. We are willing to submit to oversight and inspection." "And protocol sanctuary?" the Valorian asked. "Will humanity reinstate their self-imposed restrictions?" Park was silent for a long moment. "Protocol sanctuary has been modified and reinstated," he said finally. "But humanity will no longer hide our capabilities. We will maintain our weapons in active status. We will train our forces in their use. We will never be caught unprepared again." "That is unacceptable," the Myron said. "You cannot possess such weapons, and we already do." Park interrupted. "The question isn't whether we possess them. The question is whether you want us inside the council where you can monitor us, or outside it where you cannot." The council recognized humanity as a guardian species 1 week later. It was a title that meant both honor and warning. Guardians were too powerful to ignore, too dangerous to provoke. The galaxy would treat humanity with respect, but it was the respect given to a tiger, beautiful and deadly, best admired from a distance on New Sarajevo. The colony had been rebuilt. Memorials stood in the center of the capital city, a simple stone wall inscribed with words that survivors had chosen. "We held back so we wouldn't become this. We became this anyway. May we never forget the cost." Children played in the parks. Now markets bustled with activity. Life continued, but everyone who lived there knew what had happened in these streets. Everyone remembered the price of peace at the military academy on Earth. Young cadets studied the war. They learned about Protocol Sanctuary, about why it was created, about why it failed. They learned about New Sarajevo and Krell Prime. They learned about the weapons humanity possessed, and they learned about restraint. Protocol Sanctuary is not about weakness, their instructor told them. It's about understanding what we're capable of, about knowing that winning isn't the only thing that matters. The instructor was Colonel Sarah Okonkwo, retired admiral, war criminal acquitted on grounds of lawful military action. She taught because someone had to help the next generation understand, had to make sure they learned from the mistakes she had made in the darkness between stars. Human patrol fleets maintained constant vigilance. The ships were newer, better armed, equipped with all the weapons humanity had once locked away. They would never be caught unprepared again, but their rules of engagement were strict. Protocol Sanctuary modified, not abandoned. Measured response, proportional force protection of civilian populations, all the old guidelines. Backed now by the threat of overwhelming violence, it was a peace built on fear of what humanity could do, fear of what they had already. done fear of what they might become if they ever stopped holding back again in the Krell territories. Now divided into 6 smaller states under human oversight, the population slowly recovered. They rebuilt their cities. They mourned their dead. They learned to live under the shadow of the species that had broken their empire. Some spoke of revenge, most spoke of survival. All of them understood that challenging humanity would mean extinction. The galaxy had seen what humans were capable of when provoked. No one wanted to provoke them again. Ambassador Chun sat in her apartment on Earth, writing her memoirs. The manuscript was nearly complete, a chronicle of first contact, of diplomatic failure, of the slide into total war. How does it end? Her editor asked during a review session. Chun looked out her window at the city below, at the orbital platforms above, at the peace that felt like holding one's breath. It doesn't end, she said. We won the war. We proved we could survive without restraint. But we lost something in the process. Lost the belief that we were better than our weapons. So what happens now? The editor pressed. Now we live with what we've learned, Chun said. We hold back again. But this time, everyone knows it's a choice. The galaxy knows what we're capable of, and more importantly, we know. She turned back to her manuscript. The real question is whether we can live with that knowledge, whether we can maintain our humanity while possessing inhuman power, whether restraint means anything when everyone knows it's backed by the threat of annihilation. And can we? The editor asked. Chun smiled sadly. Ask me in another 100 years on a transport ship between Earth and the outer colonies. A young girl asked her father about the war. She had been born after the fighting stopped. The scars were history to her, not memory. Why did we fight? She asked her father, a veteran of the Krell Prime Siege, looked at his daughter for a long moment. Because they attacked us, he said finally, and we couldn't let that stand. But why did so many people die? Because we forgot, he said. Forgot why we held back in the first place. Forgot that winning isn't the only thing that matters. Will we forget again? The girl asked her. Father looked out the viewport at the stars. I hope not, he said. That's why we remember. Why? We build memorials and teach history so the next generation won't make the same mistakes. The girl considered this. Were we the good guys? She asked her father, had no answering. The end. That was the question humanity couldn't answer. They had defended themselves. They had won, they had survived, but the cost of victory lingered in the names on memorial walls, in the ruins of Krell Prime, and the nightmares of veterans. The fear that colored every diplomatic interaction. The galaxy had peace, but it was a peace built on the knowledge that humanity could wage war without mercy. That they possessed the weapons and will to destroy civilizations. That their restraint was a gift, not a limitation. And gifts, the galaxy understood, could always be taken back. So they walked carefully around humanity's poke, respectfully negotiated fairly, and remembered what happened when someone forgot that humanity's kindness was a choice, that their restraint was voluntary, that beneath the diplomacy and protocol lived something ancient and terrible, something that had learned to destroy worlds and still sleep at night, something that humanity hoped never to unleash again, but would, if they had to, because that was the final lesson of the Krell War. Humanity had proven they could win without Merchad, proven they could become monsters, and having proven it once, the galaxy would never forget, neither would humanity, and that knowledge, more than any weapon or fleet, was what kept the peace, a peace built not on trust, but on memory.